Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like these. Now, let's get into today's story video.
She cheated on me from the jump. I'll be honest, I'm 23 years old and in college right now, and my partner is in graduate school, but the relationship was serious and had been 14 months long, and we had been talking about perhaps getting married after I finished, which was meant to be in December. I flunked because of this, and while the school cleared my record, it's now 9 weeks from today. We had this plan to get married, then after she finished a year later, if I had the money, we would fly to Brussels for a honeymoon and then decide whether or not to have a family. If any of that is too risky on Rule 1, I apologize, but I am not attempting to breach any rules. To me, it is a serious, long-term relationship, which is why I believe it belongs here. I kept quiet about it because I was embarrassed that it happened to me. I've been cheated on before, but I've never felt so pitiful. My boyfriend and I met in early September 2020, and I believed we had something truly special. We were frighteningly similar, and everything seemed to be wonderful and well behaved. I had a couple moments of concern since she had a few man pals she did overnight excursions with, but I assured myself I was being paranoid. We had discussed whether we were exclusive and committed about a month ago, and the answer was yes, so I was going to trust her. Things began to heat up in early October, but it's a gradual train crash. She began talking about this 30-year-old unsuccessful MMA fighter who was like a brother to her and emphasized his abs many times. I informed her that I wasn't good with it and that I wanted to meet him. She replied, absolutely, you'd get along wonderfully, and I left. A week later, there was a conversation, and I joked that the only reason she dates me is because I can move her stuff. She suddenly appears out of nowhere and says, well, Yufk man can do it, and he can take out my sofa after bashing me into it. I came to a halt, exclaimed, and said that this was not acceptable. She attempted to tell me that my joke was worse, but I was so offended that I asked her straight out whether she had been cheating. First, it is none of your business, and second, you know I would never. She responded. I should have called it right then and there, but I told myself that I was foolish. Fast forward to one night when she gets me these incredibly costly boots out of the blue. She had no reason, she said, but she said I looked pleased, and that was essential, but it was also like $200 boots, and she lives on $800 a month for rent and food, and she is in debt spending more than that. That night, she called and said she needed me badly and was on her way to get me. We were going to stay in her flat and play home for a week. I was a little concerned since I had worked the following day and couldn't simply get there from her apartment, but she insisted on paying for an Uber or whatever. I agreed and made plans to cover for my absence for the week. When I arrived, we watched Beetlejuice and then went to bed. The next morning, I awoke early and went out to purchase us donuts before returning, and when she awoke, she had a million things to do. It had been a long day, and I realized at the end that I would need to complete schoolwork while I was at her house, so I asked if I could use her laptop, and she said yes and gave me the password. I left for work at 6 a.m. and returned at 10 p.m. to an empty apartment with a letter saying she had an emergency with her grandmother and would be returning soon, as well as to babysit her dog. I replied okay and had a bath before going to use her computer, when I discovered the messages. Her communications were shown on her fucking computer, and the final message was her messaging Yufk man, I can't wait to taste you tonight. I contacted her because I was nauseous and shaking and wanted an explanation. She was furious and demanded to know why I was in her messages, which I told her she had left up. She then acknowledged that she was with a Yufka man down south and that they had plans for the following 5 days. I asked if I could go, and she answered yes, but only if I killed her dog and left her flat to be looted. I broke down and remained like a fool, resulting in a series of panic episodes, and my life essentially became feeding and caring for that dog, followed by swallowing NyQuil to put myself to sleep. She came home, sat me down, and told me she loved me but wasn't attracted to me, that she had been dating the Yufk man for 2 weeks, and that was the end of it, she vowed. I was furious, so I returned her fucking gilt boots and left. She returned 2 days later, apologizing and expressing her desire to make things right. I decided to forgive her, but she kept calling late at night in this breathless voice that made me sick because I knew she was cheating but didn't accuse her. Then one night she proclaimed me her soulmate, and everything that followed practically shouted OC. R.A.P. I have to go, he's coming down the stairs right now. Goodbye. I knew what was going on, and I was fucking done. I walked away, telling her to herself and that I despised her. That was the day after my birthday, November 9th. I was in a poor position and began drinking again and doing other awful things to myself, nearly dying as a result, but I healed somewhat and wasn't actively messing up my life. I shaved my head, lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks and have since lost another 60, and I stopped seeing people socially, and still haven't since it happened with 3 exceptions with my best friend. Then, in December, she returned. She realized she was a monster and wanted to make things right. I told her I disliked her and didn't want to see her, but she threatened to injure herself, so I caved and let her take me to her apartment. I held her while she cried nonstop about how she was a monster and how no one but me had ever loved her and blah blah blah. I gritted my teeth and struck a pact with myself. I'd try to forgive, but there would be rules, and she was on thin ice. We really spent a whole day and a half drafting the contract she insisted on retaining on her Google Drive and a point system for her transgressions since she didn't trust me not to walk away for no reason. We spent Christmas together watching movies and decorating a tree, and she broke down again and confessed. Apparently, she was seeing other guys the whole time we were together, and to top it off, her nasty former boyfriend wasn't her ex until 2 months into our relationship. She said he was violent, but I honestly doubt it. After the event, I checked into him and it seemed she had all the cards and pushed him into the army to get rid of him so she could about. I told her to stop talking because I didn't want to hear any more of what she was saying. As a result of her deception, I promised myself to strive harder, and so we find ourselves in this situation. We came to an end on the date, and the next morning she texted me, claiming she was ill but wanted to express her affection for me and express her want to speak with me. All right, I said, go get some rest. In the evening of the same day, I had a question about something in the contract, and I swear to you that the wording on one of our agreements about where we would meet had been changed because I had specifically stated that it had to be within an hour walking distance of my home, for my safety, but it had been changed to 2 hours driving, which is absurd. When she answered the phone, I overheard her shout, "It's nothing," before sprinting out the door and shutting it behind her. My stomach fell, and my first thought was, "Where are you?" I immediately asked. "I'll tell you, but you're not allowed to be unhappy," she said, and that was the end of it. I didn't say anything, and she then revealed that she had returned to the youth boy's place. Wow, I couldn't stop myself from repeating that again and over. She alternated between saying, "You don't have a right to be mad," and saying, "We were simply sitting on his couch watching Game of Thrones," as she proceeded to repeat the 2 phrases again. I ended my phone conversation with her and went for a walk. During that night, I walked about 20 miles, just enjoying an out-of-body experience, until I was picked up by my best friend, who drove me home and sat with me the whole way. The real sting is that when I returned to check on the contract later that night while wandering about, she had taken it down. Her social media accounts, Facebook and Venmo, were suspended, and I'm sure she had the other guy suspend my Facebook account as well, so I couldn't alert her. I've been feeling numb ever since, and it's been quite tough for me to get back on my feet. The thought of keeping this bottled up has been torturous, so I'm pressuring myself to say something. I'm not sure what more to say or why I've come to this place. I believe all I really want to know is what it is right now. To be quite honest, it has been really tough and lonely. Although my closest friend checked in on me on January 20th and took me to see my grandmother last Monday, I've been on my own for the most part since then. I can't even bring myself to talk about it with my friends or family since it's too painful and embarrassing for them to hear. I'm really at a loss for what to say at this point.